Welcome to Ephemera. I am fantasy author Katie Brisky.
And I'm editor Jen R. Albert. We hope you're enjoying our theme music courtesy of Alex White. Welcome to anybody joining us for the first time, and welcome back to those who have visited our virtual home before. For those of you who are new, Ephemera is an award-nominated reading series chaired by Katie and myself.
Pre-COVID, we held events in the Glad Day Bookshop, and we are thrilled to enjoy transforming ourselves with fiction, music, and art right here on YouTube. And we would like to begin tonight by acknowledging that the land on which I live and work is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. This land is covered under Treaty 13 and is part of the Dish with One Spoon.
And the land on which I live and work is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas, and is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. Additionally, this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation.
I was asked recently to consider what the land might be sharing with me right now. It's the depth of winter here in the Northern Hemisphere. The solstice has passed, but it's still very dark. It doesn't look anything like spring, but the processes by which it returns are already in motion. One thing I hear from this is that transformation may be slow, it may be incremental, but it's constant. Reconciliation is a transformation of relationship and ways of being together. None of us, on an individual, institutional, or societal level, has completed that transformation. For an individual, it can be hard to know where to start, even. Getting from here to there feels as distant as full summer leaf in January. But if we commit to transformation, it doesn't stop. One action or learning today and another tomorrow, next week, next month. How much change can you affect in yourself and your community? There's really only one way to find out, isn't there? But commitment is the key. It won't just happen. Transformative change can be supported by small actions, but it's supported by action. So if you are a settler or otherwise working from a place of privilege, how can you push yourself to change? Which of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action can you personally address? May our transformations be constant and bend towards justice. Thank you.
We are excited to rejoin you for our first event of 2023. So, Katie, did you make any New Year's resolutions, any transformations planned for this year?
I mean, I am more into intentions and SMART goals than resolutions per se. But I can already tell that it is going to be transformatively busy. And you?
SMART goals. I like that. For me,
they're measurable. That's the key.
Measurable. Yes, you need the small steps in between. I definitely would like to improve my spoken French. I've started along that path, and that's a big goal for me this year.
I want to see.
I wonder if Prancy has any personal transformations planned.
I wonder how a skeleton deer would transform himself. An intriguing question for sure. But we'll have to put that aside as we welcome our first reader. Millie Ho is a writer and artist based in Canada. Her short stories and poems have appeared or are forthcoming in The Book of Witches, Lightspeed, Nightmare, Uncanny, Augur, Strange Horizons, and Elsewhere. Her work was a finalist for the Ignite and Risling Awards. You can find her at millieho.net, and please note the following piece includes death and rebirth and dysphoria. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here, Millie.
Thanks for having me. This is really exciting. So the piece I'm going to be reading today is called The Feng Huang, and it was first published in Lightspeed magazine. Her skin was sore and feverish under her fingers, as it always was a few days after she came back from the dead. Candace unwrapped the bandages around her head and peeled off the itchy scabs behind her ears. She shuddered at the memory of her regeneration, the charred bones snapping back into place, the raw skin stretching over exposed nerves, the first pump of blood searing like hot acid through her reborn body. She glanced out the hospital room window and watched the ferry spill commuters back onto Hong Kong Island. She wished she could be one of them. Anyone else, really. The door opened. Her mother, still wearing her waitressing uniform, appeared in the reflection behind her. She smiled shakily when she saw Candace out of bed. They ate soggy pork belly on rice and chatted about the week Candace missed, how the restaurant owner finally kicked out his gambling addict son, how the tasio bao her mother made for a church potluck was a hit, and then about Solven, the new anger-suppressing pills the doctor had put Candace on. It's only been 2 days, so it's too early to tell if they're working, Candace said. She frowned at the pill on the bedside table, which looked like a lavender Tic Tac. Maybe they're a waste of money anyway. Nothing has stopped my flare-up so far, so how likely is it that these pills will? You just said that it was too early to tell, her mother said. There were dark bags under her eyes, the color of old bruises. She'd always worked multiple jobs when Candace and her little brother Sammy were growing up, and had doubled down on her shifts now that Candace was getting hospitalized at the best hospital on Hong Kong Island, the only place equipped to handle her case. Give it some time, okay? They chatted some more, and before her mother left, she told Candace that Sammy got accepted to St. Edward's International School on a partial scholarship. Guilt tightened around Candace's neck. She thought of Sammy hunched over his textbooks in their cramped box of a living room, how Sammy always stayed up late to do homework on the top bunk of their bed, back when it was still safe to sleep in the same room. Sammy was her family's only hope for a better life, but now they had to use some of the funds for his schooling on Candace's treatment. After the door clicked shut, Candace opened the window and sucked in the sweet summer air. Tears burned in her eyes and smeared the neon Victoria Harbor cityscape into a nauseating brightness. I'm a burden, she thought, and imagined hoisting herself onto the sill. Dust would powder the soles of her feet, and her hospital gown would balloon up with the breeze as she leaned into the mountains below. I should just die for real. Rhythmic guitars, gritty vocals in English. Candace pressed her cheek against the mesh screen until she could see the window of the next room. Light shimmered out of it, which was a shock since she was usually the only inpatient at this hospital ward, which handled medical mysteries. She laughed when she realized that her neighbor was listening to Poison by Alice Cooper. It was a song that Sammy, who, despite his smarts, had the cheesiest music taste on the planet, replayed constantly when he studied because he claimed glam metal helped him retain information. The surprise of hearing the song, or maybe just the discovery that she wasn't alone after all, was enough to snap Candace out of her dark thoughts. She fell asleep with the pill dissolving under her tongue and promised herself that she would live another day. Candace met her new neighbor in the eating area the next morning when they both reached for the jug of tea at the same time. She looked young, maybe in her early 20s like Candace, though her straight back and raised chin gave her a dignified air that not even the baggy hospital gown draping off her thin frame could deflate. Darn, I thought I had this place all to myself, the girl said. But she slid the jug to Candace and smiled. Her name was Fiona Chow. She was the daughter of a real estate developer and had just come back from sequencing her genome in Italy, which unfortunately didn't tell her anything new about her condition. They ate their toast and congee by a large bay window overlooking the mountains. My father may be good at business, but he's dumb everywhere else. Fiona dipped her toast in the congee until it was soggy enough to roll up and cram into her mouth. Her nails were studded with what looked like tiny diamonds, and Candace could imagine her all dressed up in a mink coat with a designer bag hanging off her arm. He actually thought I made up my condition just to get attention. Then the physical symptoms came, and that shut him up real quick. What's your condition? Candace asked. Fiona smirked. Like I tell you, she said, and stole the last toast from Candace's plate. Candace looked back out the window. Forested land stretched farther than she could see, and a hot shard of anger pierced her mind. In the past few years, the rent at her housing complex had nearly doubled, and it was clearly not due to a lack of supply. The government owned all the land and controlled who could buy and develop it, which kept people like Candace and her family in tiny, water-stained apartments that were barely tall enough to stand in. Tell me about yourself. Candace blinked. Fiona had leaned forward with her face in her hands. Her eyes were luminous dark pearls, and bits of wet toast clung to her heart-shaped lips. Candace almost didn't want to ruin such innocence with her depressing truth. I burn to death sometimes, Candace muttered, and then I come back to life. She expected Fiona to snort or laugh, but all Fiona said was, like a phoenix? Candace shrugged. I guess. She thought about the first time she incinerated. It was during a time when Candace was silently crumbling under the rigors of her high school's international baccalaureate program, when she woke up with an aching jaw every morning because she'd been grinding her teeth all night. When Candace finally told her mother that she wanted to quit the program, her mother had slapped her. A second later, there was a snap in Candace's mind, and then flames circled her wrists like handcuffs. By the time her mother splashed her with water, it was too late. The white flames had licked up her arms and shoulders, an inferno that grew until everything went dark, like a plug was pulled. How about other stuff? Fiona asked. Other stuff? Yeah, like what else are you all about? Oh. It'd been a while since anyone asked Candace about herself outside of her condition. She stared at her hands, where white curls of dead skin were still flaking off, then tucked them between her thighs. I have a little brother. He's entering high school and really smart. Yeah? Tell me more. The last embers of anger in Candace's mind fizzled out the more they talked. The more Fiona leaned in with those big eyes, like Candace was actually interesting. By the time they split up in the hall to go to their separate respective morning checkups, a lightness had started to flicker inside Candace's chest. And that's the end of my snippet. Thank you.
You. And you can find the rest at Lightspeed. And what I love about that, it's so richly textured, but also that dialogue and that chemistry just crackles. That was incredible.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. So I also got a weird text from Prancy while this was going on. He says, our skeleton deer mascot, that he was hanging out with Kevin Kelp and the Swamp Witch when a spell went wrong, and he's now transformed into a mer skeleton deer.
So wait, is he bones all the way down? Like,
No, he says his upper half is a skeleton deer, and then the fishy tail part is scales and flesh, which feels very weird, apparently.
it would, I think. Well, I think we got to help him. He's our bud. Maybe a magic spell. What if we change one word in a book to bones, any book, and transform the meaning in book title? Yes, of course. And then transform the meaning entirely. We could use that title as our spell.
Like the embroidered bones, or Nona the Bones, or High Times in the Bones Parliament.
Save some for the audience.
Fair enough, audience. You can drop your best transformed book title in the chat.
Okay. While you do that, I will introduce our performer tonight. Suna Dasi is an Indian Dutch musician and writer who studied and worked in theater and dance in the Netherlands. Performing has taken her all over the world. With her wife, she is a live-in member of the Lodge Arts Collective. She records and performs in EEB, a progressive rock band fronted by Texan artist Erin Bennett and all-women metal outfit Crow. Erin Bennett is performing with Suna tonight in this for our Ephemera episode in this little video I'm going to share. Suna is currently working on her poetry collection and her first novel. In 2017, she was nominated for a BSFA Best Short Fiction Award. Just 1 second, I shall share my screen and you will be seeing this beautiful performance.
Hello, I'm Suna Dasi, and it's really lovely to be here on what I believe is the first Ephemera episode of 2023, so Happy New Year, everyone. I have cunningly, because I'm in a band called Ebb, roped in my lead singer, Erin Bennett.
Hello.
And together we're going to be doing 2 songs of our new album, Mad and Killing Time, which, as it happens, is a journey of transformation, so it fits beautifully with the theme of this episode. Erin?
This song is called Hecate. Frozen and living fire, stagnation, crawling across the floor, looking for signs of life. When your current wings give you no direction, clip them and leave them behind. Look at you, smiling in spite of the rain. Hey, leaving our misery. It won't be long. Away from you, shining inside of your pain. Babe watches you illuminate. You were chosen when you were born. Elation. Gravity can't do more. It can't hold you down, but your current wings give you no direction. Fuck them and leave them to drown. Oh, can't be wrong. Look at you, smiling in spite of the rain, hey, leaving the misery. It won't be long away from you, shining inside of your pain, hey, watches you illuminate. Can't be wrong. Look at you, smiling in spite of the rain, hey, leaving the misery. It won't be long away from you, shining inside of your pain, hey, watches you illuminate. Hate, 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 hate.
Okay, we shall now be doing Mary Jane, which is the last song on the Ebb album, and it is a song in which I think you wrote it because it's about seeing how others don't see themselves and hoping that they will blossom in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely making, giving encouragement to someone who you can see is stuck in a bit of a rut, but that you know with just a little bit of encouragement and a little bit of positive thinking that they can themselves transform. That's Mary Jane. Tell to me your sorrows, Mary Jane. I can see you hurt and losing yourself again. Can't you see in you what I see every day? You're more beautiful than summer nights that may remind you. Let me talk you down, sweet Mary Jane. Put your drinking and your pills all down for me. Let me silence all the screaming that you face. Your experience is not your fate. Let me remind you. Scared, toiling in the dark. I don't
across the water, Mary Jane. I surround you like the mist after summer rain, and I'll wash from you your fears and all your shame. You're more beautiful than summer nights. Let me remind you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks very much.
Once again, I am so excited I cannot find the unmute button. That was amazing. I was expecting incredible music, but also incredibly well shot, like the cinematography there.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, what a way to start 2023. Also, we've been graced by Guinness's presence. He was
Another gift.
Yes, lured by the siren songs of that incredible music. So
I've got a good feeling about this. Chat
Wait, I
was
got one more.
very-
Okay. Bones wanted on the voyage.
Well,
It's not wanted on the voyage. I replaced now it's Bones wanted on the voyage.
yeah.
It's a book title. I'm funny.
Well, I think we have enough. We have way more than enough. A Wrinkle in Bones, a Farewell to Bones, The Bones of the Baskervilles, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Bones, Bones in the Bone. I'm not really even sure which that's supposed to be originally, but that's great suggestion. Thanks, everyone.
Well, it seems we still have a half scaly, half skeletal murderer on our hands. Bonus points and eternal admiration to anyone who can draw what that might look like. But on a more serious note, perhaps we need some sort of spellcaster to deliver this incredible spell we have wrought together.
Luckily, SFF is full of spellcasters. So we've got them in short stories, fairy tales, novels, films, television shows. Everybody, tell us who your favorite magic user is and what story they come from. Let's assemble a magic super team in the chat.
And one of my favorite magicians of narrative is our next guest. See my segue. I'd like to welcome our next reader tonight. Erik Buchanan is an author, ghostwriter, fight director, actor, black belt, and parent. He is also a communications consultant, but that doesn't sound as exciting. I mean, I think it sounds pretty exciting, actually. His newest series, The Stalker Chronicles, is available on Smashwords, Amazon, and other online retailers. His trilogy, The Thomas Flaherty Stories, Small Magics, Cold Magics, and True Magics, is published by Canada's Dragon Moon Press. He has also ghostwritten 9 more books, acted on stage, TV, and film, and has directed fights for film and theater. Welcome, Erik. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm thrilled. So First time I've done a reading with Ephemera, and I'm very sort of excited about it. So I'll dive right in just a moment. I realized I didn't give a trigger warning for my reading, so I'll just mention there is one bit of gruesomeness at the end, and there's also young adult relationship issues, so take that as you will. So with no further ado, I'm going to read from the first chapter of my new book, called A Festival of Magic, and I've abridged the chapter greatly so that we can get the feel of it while actually having time to hear what's going on. And it starts with our hero, Abowith. Sorry, I should get her name right. I should get dressed, Abowith thought, but she stayed where she sat, cross-legged in her oversized wooden chair in front of the iron wood stove, wrapped in a thick wool blanket over a nightdress, staring at the pounding rain outside her window. This year, for the first time, Abowith was alone for the Festival of Magic, stuck in a damp, cold apartment instead of home with her family. A knock on the coach house door startled her out of her thoughts. Abowith rose from a chair and padded barefoot across the chilly floor and down the stairs. She opened the door and found Lisserith, her girlfriend, wrapped in a long wool coat and a waxed leather coat. "Oh, thank the gods," Lisserith said. "When you weren't at Temple, I got worried." "Liz," Abowith couldn't find the words. "I wasn't expecting. Can I come in?" "What?" Abowith shook her head, trying to get her brains moving. "Of course." Lisserith stepped inside and threw back the hood, sending a spray of raindrops against the door behind her. She heaved a sigh of relief. "I'd rather be up to my knees in snow. This weather is awful. Are you sick?" "What? No, I'm not sick. I was just..." Her words dried up in her mouth. Abowith stared at her feet, feeling pathetic. "Let's go to the festival," Lisserith said. Since we're not at Temple, we can get there before it gets too crowded." I don't..." "Abowith." Lisserith's hand landed on her shoulder, startling her. Lisserith put on a smile which didn't hide the worry in her eyes. "Abraniatok has the world's biggest festival of magic. I want to go with you." "Oh." And so after a bit of waffling, Abowith goes to the Festival of Magic with Lisserith, and they see wondrous things which would take too long to tell in a 10-minute reading. But then Lisserith led Abowith into the magical merchant maze, and Abowith's senses overloaded. Delicate, delightful perfumes floated on the air. Music filled their ears. Snatches of familiar, comforting songs and joyful, spirit-lifting melodies wove through gentle, relaxing chants with a rhythm that stole their tension away. Standing next to one booth set their skin tingling. Near another, their muscles relaxed, and beside a third, their hair stood up on end. One booth offered mirrors that showed the back of your head on command. Another boasted tea to soothe the mind, body, and spirit. A dozen displayed floating, swimming, or flying toys. Lisserith stopped and pointed. "Finder rings!" Abowith followed her finger to a booth where paired rings sat in neat rows. They were gold and silver, pewter and copper, each with an arrow on their top. The woman behind the counter glanced at their interlaced fingers and smiled. "Come here, my lovelies," she said, extending a pair of silver rings. "Wear my rings and you will never lose each other, no matter how large the crowd or great the distance. Just put it on your finger, hold it to your lips, and say the name of your beloved. The arrow on the ring will point to them." From somewhere deep in Abowith's mind came the thought that, though they had been seeing each other for months now, neither she nor Lisserith had uttered the phrase, "I love you." Lisserith took the rings and pressed one into Abowith's hand. She slipped the other onto her finger, and a shy smile formed on her lips, and raised the ring to her mouth. Abowith's bemused, overstimulated brain kicked into full panic mode. "Stop!" Her shout echoed through the booths, freezing Lisserith in place. People around them looked, saw the rings and the women staring at each other, and turned away, deciding that whatever relationship drama was occurring was not their concern. Abowith didn't care. If Liz says my name and I say hers, and it works for her and it doesn't work for me, she'll think. Lisserith's expression went from confused to crestfallen. Abowith's heart twisted. Lisserith took in a shaky breath and began saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't." "It isn't you, Liz, it's..." Abowith stopped, realizing that what she had almost said was not at all what she meant. She handed the ring back to the woman in the booth, who took it with open hands and mouthed, "I'm sorry." Abowith turned on her heel. "I need to get out of here." Lisserith had almost declared Abowith her beloved. Abowith liked Lisserith, really liked her. but she never called anyone beloved. Worse, trying to use the magic rings would have been a complete disaster, no matter what she said. She kept going, hoping Lisworth was following her, but not daring to turn and look. Aberwith broke free of the maze and found herself before the big stage. It was 40 feet across, with 20-foot curtains forming the sides and back, and a skirt curtain running the length of its front. Only a small crowd stood before it this early in the day, but they applauded and cheered as two women spun in the air above the stage, their loose-legged trousers and wide-sleeved shirts creating flowing lines of fabric that dazzled the eye. Aberwith stumbled forward, her legs moving of their own accord. Aberwith? Lisworth's voice, filled with worry, underlaid with fear, broke into Aberwith's thoughts. Are you all right? She followed me. Aberwith's breath escaped with a sigh. I just... What if Lisworth likes me more than I like Lisworth? What if Lisworth isn't my beloved? What if she is? What do I do if she says it first? Lisworth's feet shuffled on the cobbles. I didn't mean to make you... Stop, please, Aberwith said. Liz, let me... The Felicity Sisters! A young woman in gray magician's robes called as she stepped up from the side of the curtain, her words bringing another round of applause. The flying women bowed once more, landed, and left the stage. One more performance, and then we break for an hour. From the great magical city, Pagondahawk, I present one who makes you see what is not there, hear what makes no sound, and believe what's impossible. The master illusionist, Crondacaro. We'll watch him, Aberwith declared, still not able to look at Lisworth's face. We'll watch him, and so I can get my thoughts together. After he finishes, we'll talk. I promise. A tall man with dark wavy hair worn loose and a light brown, clean-shaven face strode forward. His red rose sparkled. His black breeches absorbed light like a void, and his black boots shone with polish. The world holds many sorts of magic, he said, his voice booming over the audience. He raised his wand, and it glowed gold. 8 more people in magicians' robes appeared beside him, making the crowd gasp. Some work with the elements, Crondacaro continued, and 4 magicians stepped forward, with earth, air, fire, and water. As Crondacaro named each one, a magician moved. The first raised a pillar of stone. The second spun winds that twisted and danced columns of leaves around it. The third waved their hands, and the leaves burst into flame, and the fourth lifted their arm high, and a fountain of water leapt from the pillar, dousing the flames, but never touching the ground. The crowd applauded, and Aberwith stole a glance at Lisworth. The other woman stared at the stage and looked like her heart was breaking. Aberwith cursed herself, desperate to find the words to fix it. Other magicians fly, Crondacaro continued, or enchant a sword, or raise crops from dry earth. A magician may even create a monster to terrify their enemies. As he spoke, his illusionary magicians demonstrated each skill, with the last one raising a long serpentine creature with dark red scales, glowing orange eyes, and wings that spread the width of the stage. It sent a stream of flames over the audience, and then it and the magicians faded away. But among the magical arts, Crondacaro continued, one is the most beautiful. Roses sprouted from the ground, bright red and yellow, their heavy aroma filling the audience's noses. The most delightful. Butterflies rose from every flower, dancing in the air. And the most ephemeral. The butterflies and flowers vanished into sparkling dust. Crondacaro grinned. I cannot create anything new, nor can I change the fabric of reality, but for a little while, you will believe that I have. He spread his arms wide. I shall fill your eyes with sights and your ears with sounds that do not exist. Bring your sweetest dreams and most terrible nightmares to life, only to make them vanish away into nothing. For you, The curtains behind Crondacaro billowed apart. The magician spun and for one moment confronted the giant beast that reared up behind him, twice as tall as a man and 4 times as wide. It raised its forelegs, revealing huge paws tipped with claws half as long as a man's forearm. Lightning ran over its red fur, and 2 glowing green eyes peered from its enormous head. It roared, its wide-open mouth showing sharp teeth far more terrifying than the illusionary dragon. Then, moving so fast it blurred, the creature brought its head down over the illusionist and snapped its jaws shut, biting the man in half. And if you want to see more of it, I encourage everyone to go out and buy my brand new book, Festival of Magic. And thank you so much for listening.
That was a heck of a cliffhanger.
I do my best.
Well planned. I also appreciate the use of the word ephemeral. And you have such a knack for like that awkward adolescent angst. Like it's in the Thomas Flaherty books too.
I lived it for most of my youth. So yeah, it's my thing.
It resonates with me. So because I also lived it for most of my youth. So relatable. Thank you, Erik. So who is our dream team? Because I would have said the magician and Erik story, but he just got chomped in half. So who else we got?
I was going to say, I thought we were pretty well set, but nope, not anymore. Lots of good ones in chat, though. I can't scroll in chat. Granny Weatherwax from Discworld, Liriel from Garth Nix's Old Kingdom series, Priya from Tasha's series, Burning Kingdom series.
Cool. But even with all of that superpowered spell casting, it hasn't worked. Maybe we're going about this the wrong way. Maybe the transformation needs to be more internal. You know, I can think of few things more transformative than story itself.
Ah, that's true. You're right. Audience, what is a story or book that changed you? Either one that you read or that you wrote, or both?
Share the title and a little bit about why, if you feel like it. We'll see you in the chat.
And now it is my pleasure to introduce our final reader tonight. Marie Brennan is a former anthropologist and folklorist who shamelessly pillages her academic fields for inspiration. She recently misapplied her professor's hard work to The Night Parade of 100 Demons and the short novel Driftwood. She's the author of the Hugo Award-nominated Victorian adventure series, The Memoirs of Lady Trent, along with several other series, over 70 short stories, and New Worlds series of world-building guides. As half of M.A. Carrick, she has written the epic Rook and Rose trilogy, beginning with The Mask of Mirrors. For more information, visit swantower.com, at @swan_tower on Twitter, or Patreon is patreon.com/swan_tower. Welcome.
For having me. It's likewise my first time here, and this is just a delight. I love the multimedia. We even get the music and performance aspects of things along with the stories. So the piece I'm going to read is a short story that was published a few years ago in Strange Horizons. It comes with a content warning for harm to and death of children, which I feel like makes the story sound far more horrible than I think it is in the long run, but nevertheless, the warning absolutely does need to be there. So for anybody for whom that's a deal breaker, I quite understand. It is called This Is How. This is how a Valravn is made. A child dies. Lost in the woods, he curls up at the base of an ancient oak and never rises again. Or she falters in the snow, lying down for a moment by the side of the road, just a moment to rest her eyes. Or, starving and alone, he weeps for someone to help him, but no one does. A raven comes, pecking, tearing red blood on a black beak. Not eyes, as some tales would have it, but the cold red blood of the child's heart, chilled and stopped by death. A child falls. A raven feeds. A Valravn flies away. This is how a Valravn dies. A noble warrior faces the ravenous foe. Bright steel against dark, bright armor against dark, and if he is quick enough and strong enough, he cuts the creature down. Where once a malevolent raven knight stood, there lies now the body of a bird, wings spread wide and still. Or a woman catches a black-winged bird and pierces its breast with a pin of purest gold. The beak that once feasted on a child's corpse opens in a silent cry. The heart that beat with a child's blood stutters once and stops. Or, in a frozen wood, a man kneels before the Raven Knight. He neither pleads for his life nor fights to end the one that threatens his. A flash of shadow, a spatter of blood across the snow, and the man falls. It will be a long time before the Valravn realizes that he too died that day. This is how a Valravn weakens. In small ways at first. Blood tastes less sweet. Pleas for mercy ring slightly out of tune. When he takes human form, his skin itches as if something is crawling beneath it. When he takes raven form, it feels wrong. A Valravn does not sleep, but when he sits alone as human knight or scavenger bird, watching the stars and the moon and the blood-stained sunset, his mind is disturbed. The silence within is filled with murmurs he cannot quite make out. A Valravn is not a person to be troubled by hopes or fears or memories of the past. Yet he remembers, first in flashes, then in long, uneasy reveries, from which he wakes with the sense that someone was speaking to him. But he cannot remember what the voice said. In place of silence, there is noise. In place of purity, there is doubt. In place of the Valravn, there is a creature that has begun to feel. This is how the Valravn falters. He lets someone go. A child, a girl running along a path between two fields, hurrying home before night falls. The Raven Knight lands before her, a winged black shape plummeting into a tall figure of black steel, and she drops the bundle of firewood she is carrying. She doesn't shriek, this one, though her moon-wide eyes say she recognizes what he is. If she runs, he will chase her, cut her down where she flees, and drink her heart's blood on the banks of the nearby stream. If she does not run, he will cut her down where she stands, and drink her heart's blood here between two fields. Except he doesn't. She stands there shivering, and he raises his blade, and he does not strike. They stand there until the sun sets and the stars come out, until the waning sickle of the moon rises as if to reap what the Valravn will not. By the end of the night, she is swaying and exhausted, and when she closes her eyes for a too long blink, he is gone, black feathers vanishing into the darkness before dawn. She picks up her bundle with shaking hands and staggers the rest of the way home. This is how a Valravn fights. With claws and beak, with a sword of dark steel, and with all the malice of his corrupted heart. Claws and beak and sword are no use against the voice inside his head, the voice of the man he killed. Not the first, nor the last. But this one was different, was and is. They all live on within the Valravn, the spirits of those he's slain. Like a fox with her tails, they mark him as old and worthy of fear. No tail, though, has ever given a fox such trouble. This one, he thinks, was a mistake. I am sorry. The man's final words on his knees in the snow. Odd words for someone about to die, but he said them with such sincerity. That sincerity rings through the Valravn's hollow bones, an echo that will not let him rest. Sorrow has leached the savor from the blood of his prey. Compassion has formed an uncomfortable harmony with their pleas. 3 words froze him on the path between the fields. I am sorry. As if he would apologize to the girl before he killed her. Not his words, the words of the man he slew. A good man filled with charity and mercy, temperance and kindness, who even in death refuses to be silent. The solution is easy. Release that soul, and the Valravn will be at peace once more. But there is cruelty in the cold heart's blood of a child who died lost and alone. It is the cruelty of nature twisted to her harshest face, and it is what transforms an ordinary raven to a raven of the slain. A cat may let her prey run for a time before she catches it again, but not a Valravn. He keeps what he kills and will not let the man's soul go. The next time he finds a child, he leaves the body in pieces, scattered across the daisies of the meadow. This is how a Valravn breaks. In horror, in anguish, in grief. He gathers up the scattered pieces from the stained carpet of daisies, as if he can stitch them back together again. But the force that transformed him gave him armor and a sword, not a needle and thread. He can kill, but he cannot heal. He remembers healing. He remembers gentle hands, cool water, and a soft cloth to wipe the blood away. He remembers tearing a loaf of bread in two and pressing one half into shaking, weakened hands. He remembers giving the other half away later to a mother with an infant and sleeping that night with his belly cold but his heart warm. He remembers life instead of death, soft voices instead of screens, eyes wide with gratitude instead of fear. But he also remembers killing, again and again without mercy. Many, many deaths, but not too many to count, because their souls live on within him. He relives those moments in pitiless detail, the good man's soul grieving for each and every one. What breaks him is the kindness, the compassion, the boundless heart that has room within it even for him. A creature born of death and abandonment, nature's heartless acts should be beyond mercy. That is not what a Valravn is for. I am sorry. The man knew what a Valravn was, long before the black-armored knight stood before him. And when he met one, that man grieved for the child who had died, for the raven who had unwittingly drunk the cold heart's blood, for what they had become. That soul is there too, buried beneath the rest. The weight is too great for the Valravn to bear. He curls up in his human form and screams. He cannot endure this shape, so much like the people he has killed. In raven form, he huddles into himself, head beneath one wing, pecking desperately at his own breast as if his beak were a pin of gold. If there were a brave knight present, he would spread his arms and welcome the shining blade. There is no knight. There is only himself, and the soul of the good man, and all those the Valravn has killed. This is how a Valravn changes. One by one, he lets them go. The souls drift upward like motes of light, but before that, they tear free of him like his own bones coming out. Young and old, male and female, brave and angry and screaming in terror. They do not forgive him even when he lets them go. They curse him as they depart. And the pain goes on and on, always more bones to rip out, more sins to remember. The snow around him turns red with blood, a stain becoming a carpet, becoming a great frozen pool, stretching outward through the wood. Soul after soul after soul, until only two remain. And then he stops. This is how a Valravn fears. Never once in all his existence. From the moment he lifts his beak, gleaming with a child's heart's blood, fear never touches him. He sees it, feeds on it, relishes its delicate taste, but never lets it strike him. Until now, when he hovers on the brink. Two paths lie before him, and both, he fears, lead to damnation. Release the child and die at last, completing the death that began when he slew the good man, but that man's soul will die with him. Or release the man and return to what he was when he began, a dead child's soul in the body of a raven, but the warmth within him will be gone. And without that warmth, what is he but a Valravn? A killer without mercy, a creature that knows no kindness. He may remember what he has done, but the spark that began it will have flickered out, and the ashes it leaves behind cannot burn. He will begin again, repeating all his sins of before, and the thought of that terrifies him. Or a third path, stay as he is. But the fire burns too hot for that. He wants to release the two souls that remain. He knows now what goodness is and cannot reach that star while he holds two innocents trapped. Without them, though, without one or the other, the good man is silent. He has wisdom, but no answers. There are no tales of a choice like this. The child, the man, neither. Death, damnation, suffering. A choice. This is how a Valravn chooses. He lets the good man go. This is how a Valravn is remade, in mercy, in justice, in repentance. The soul of the good man flies free, and there is no pain as it goes. The raven is left alone with the soul of the child who died alone, but not like it was before. Where there used to be a raven, where there used to be a dark-armored knight, a child stands in the snow. He looks at his hands in wonder, then touches one to his breast, where a beak once pierced and tore. The skin there is soft and unmarked, and it is warm. Take fire from fire, and fire remains behind. It will continue to burn as long as it has fuel, the desire to do good instead of ill, to make amends for the sins of the past. He has freed the souls he wronged, and the one that remains is no victim of his. What killed that child, what kills all such children, is something else. Perhaps, he thinks, he can help change that. The air rustles and black wings spread, but this time their feathers are tipped with gold. A child rises, a raven repents, a gothraven flies away. In the end.
Amazing. That was such a wonderful way to end. Just so many pearls of prose that I want to like roll around my mouth and savor. And we were saying
Thank you.
before the show too, it's always cool to see how the different readings and performance come together in dialogue. The three of your readings and Suna's performance, I think they all spoke to each other really, really well.
I feel like we sort of looped back around to the Feng Huang,
Yeah.
sort of.
Yeah, I think so. And I can feel a definite energy in the air. It's definitely changed from when we started just under an hour ago. I'm assuming that we've got some transformative works of fiction.
Oh, yes. So lots. The Last Unicorn, Suri has said. Kari has Timothy Finley's Not Wanted on the Voyage and Lord of the Rings and her own book.
That
We
was
have a
one
circle
of
around.
mine, not
Was
on the
it?
voyage, yeah. Or Bones Wanted on the Voyage, as I like to say.
Stevie also said Lord of the Rings. Night Watch by Terry Pratchett. There's a lot of great ones in here. Never Ending Story from Suna herself.
There
who
was
was
a
in the
series
chat.
of fairy tale books when I was a kid. It was like a book of witches and wizards and like a book of magic animals and a book of spells. And it was like this whole series of collections, and that changed me.
Hold on. I hear something. It sounds like a rush of coins falling to the floor or water rushing into the distance. It sounds like a cracking and a creaking, like fins splitting and curling into hooves, a withering hiss and a hard clatter of
Bones! Francie has transformed back to his usual self. Thank you all for contributing the magic of your presence and the stories that have transformed you. Let's hope that we all keep transforming in positive ways this year.
So until next time, don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Ephemera Series, Twitter for occasional updates, and of course, please subscribe to this YouTube page. If you'd like to track your adventures via planner or calendar app, please feel free to put a standing get together with us on the third Wednesday of every month at 7 p.m. ET. If you follow us on YouTube too, you should get like an email when we go live. We'd like to thank the Ontario Arts Council for their funding assistance.
And as we close out tonight, we'd also like to thank our fabulous readers and performers, our composer Alex White, our friends, families, loved ones, and you. Thank you for staying with us. And we hope that you have a transformative month. We'll see you next on February 15th, right here on YouTube.